Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, June 2nd. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 92 days, the game against Michigan in 178 days. Day one of the reopening of college football recruiting is now in the books. Florida State did a Midnight Madness style event, and Ohio State welcomed in some of the top prospects in the state for the class of 2023 and also held a youth camp. Today, they're holding a camp for high schoolers and are also getting ready for this weekend's main event. A ton of high-profile official and unofficial visitors, including most of their currently committed class. Tony Gerderman and I went through that full list of visitors on the Buckeye Weekly episode that dropped yesterday, so you can listen to that if you want a full rundown of who's coming in this weekend. My guest today is Buckeye Scoop's Alex Gleitman. We're going to take a look at some of the superlatives from this weekend's visitor list. You know, who's the current player who they have to make sure they keep recruiting the hardest, who's the most likely to commit to Ohio State this month from the uncommitted guys, stuff like that. So, Alex, thank you for joining me. I'm guessing this has probably already been a pretty hectic week for you already.
Oh, it's crazy. You know, we're excited, though. It's been a long time, a long way for us. We launched, June 4th of last year. It's June 2nd today, so almost a year in the making since we've been chomping at the bit to get after stuff like this. So I know myself, Mark, Bill, Dom, Mick, Kirk, everyone is just so excited. I believe we're going to be able to cover camps, so that's going to be a big deal on Buckeye Scoop. Definitely going to be the place to be the month of June.
Yeah, for sure. Not a shortage. This is normally a very quiet time of the year. This is not going to be a quiet time of the year this year. All right, so let's start with these with probably an easy one. Of the guys visiting this weekend, which one or two guys are really the leaders of the class in terms of maybe recruiting other guys to join them in that Ohio State class?
Yeah, no doubt CJ Hicks. Mark nicknamed him Captain Buckeye. He's all over it. He's on campus yesterday. I think he's back on today. He'll be there for his official visit. He's just trying to get up there as much as possible, be around the coaches, be around his future teammates, be around guys who he's trying to convince to be Buckeyes. So he is far and away number one. I think everyone else has done a pretty good job and made a pretty nice effort. Deshaun McCullough used to be right up there with him. Obviously, he flipped to Indiana. I'll say an underrated guy at who's in people's ear is Keon Gray's wide receiver from Arizona. I know guys like Xavier and Wankba, who he played 7-on-7 football with. I know a guy like Zion Branch, who's another West Coast kid. He's been involved in trying to get these kids to Ohio State. So if you're looking for someone a little less known than CJ Hicks when it comes to recruiting fellow Buckeyes, it's going to be Keon Gray's.
Well, and they will all be here. All those guys you mentioned will be here this weekend, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. We'll get to them maybe a little bit later on. But which of the currently committed guys did the Ohio State coaching staff maybe have to spend the most time re-recruiting this weekend? Or, if you want to look at it another way, which guy who is there this weekend is there maybe the most concern about it as a potential flip away from Ohio State?
Yeah, I think Jair Brown committed. Notre Dame's going after him really hard. I know LSU, he lived in Louisiana the last few years before moving back to Ohio before last football season. He's a kid who's, I wouldn't say he's been waffling, but he's been a kid who I think has openly talked about, the possibility of visiting other places. And anytime you have that, you start to think, not get nervous, but this is a kid who could end up elsewhere. And right now, the only plan he has is to visit Ohio State officially. I'm sure he's talked about possibilities, but I think all sides just need this visit to go really well, alleviate all potential concerns on both sides of it. And if it does, I expect him to come out of this visit. I'm 1,000% committed to Ohio State, no other visits. If there are some doubts in his mind or Ohio State's mind, you might see him schedule some official visits. So, look, I understand these kids, they haven't been able to visit anywhere since last March, February even, really. And so, the questions for them is, okay, I'm committed to Ohio State, but I didn't really get to see anywhere else. I need to make sure this is the right place for me. And so I understand that need, and I think that that's fair, but I don't think that is one of these situations. I think it's just making sure that, everything checks the box for him as far as what he thought he was committing to. And I think it will after this weekend.
Yeah, give Kerry Combs a weekend with someone that seems like that usually works out pretty well. He has a pretty good track record. So that'll be an interesting one to watch for sure. Now, which of the currently uncommitted guys who's visiting this weekend would be the best, the biggest get, maybe in terms of not only positionally, but also ranking? Is there a must-get guy visiting this weekend?
Yeah, that's tough. Look, I don't think there's any or very few must-gets. I think Xavier and Nwankpa, when you think about the needs that Ohio State has in the secondary, him and Zion Branch are two of the top safeties in the country, and they absolutely can use some help at that single high safety position. And I think those two guys can both play it. So I'll say those two guys are probably up there. I think when you talk about the number one guy on my list, it's Amari Abor from the state of Texas, 5-star defensive end. I think Ohio State's done a great job getting Jack Sawyer. He's probably a 3-and-out type. I think if they get JT Tuimoloau, I could see him also playing inside, but call him an end, fine. That's great. He could be a 3-and-out kid too. After this year, I mean, who knows with the super senior stuff and the NCAA allowing last year basically not to count toward eligibility. Like, you could get a few guys hanging back, but you could also lose a bunch of guys. Tyreek Smith, Zach Harrison, Javonte Jean-Baptiste. You look at who's behind those, Tyler Friday. You look at who's behind those four, it's Sawyer. And then there's a lot of unproven guys, right? Like, so I think that's a really, really big underrated area of need that we haven't had to think about at Ohio State for a very long time. And I think that they really need to reload that position room in a big way. So Amari Abor, not only because of rankings, but because of the need and being able to get after the quarterback, which is, to me, number one thing on defense that can help hide any other weaknesses you might have in the back seven. I would say Amari Abor is that guy for me.
And he is someone who our guys have been talking pretty optimistically about recently. He was considered close to an Oklahoma lock a month or two back, and all of a sudden it seems like he's trending a lot more towards Ohio State. That will be another interesting one to keep an eye on. This will be the only official visit these guys take to Ohio State. They can obviously come back unofficially later on their own dime. But which of the guys visiting this weekend is the one who might be the biggest, like, you get one shot, so you better make the most of it guy? Like, someone who's not necessarily likely to come back to Ohio State on his own dime unless they completely blow him away this weekend. Who is the guy who it's like they'd better make the most of their opportunity this weekend?
Yeah, I was thinking Toriano Pride, a cornerback, probably leaning toward Clemson. So there's a huge opportunity to really make that first and last impression, because he'll probably make a decision sometime after he takes his officials. You got a guy in Curtis Perry coming up from Alabama. A lot of people think he's an Alabama lean, and he's coming up on his own dime, says he'll take officials in the fall, but big defensive tackle that everyone in the SEC wants from the SEC country. I mean, this might be your only shot, but I am going to go with Zach Rice, 5-star offensive lineman. I don't think this is a kid who wants to take it the whole way. I think he wants to take his official visits in June and then make his decision probably before his senior season starts. And I think Ohio State is trailing at least North Carolina, at least Notre Dame, at least maybe even Alabama. So they're probably sitting fourth out of 5 or 6 schools that this kid is still considering. And I think this might be their shot to make a big impression on Zach Rice, make him feel really at home, really comfortable with the staff, really comfortable with the fellow commits, and show him that the opportunity is there for him to be able to step in and contribute right away to a national championship contender. And I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity to get him back on campus. And I think many people would argue that recruiting 5-star offensive tackles like Zach Rice has not been Ohio State's strong suit, at least in recent memory. So that's the guy I'll go with. But both Toriano Pride and Curtis Perry are two really strong options as well.
All right. Now, so which of the guys visiting this weekend would you say is the most likely to commit to Ohio State at some point in the next 30 days or so?
That's tough. I mean, 30 days, I don't know. I mean, I might be tempted to say Emil Wagner, offensive lineman out of Uber Heights, Wayne. I think Ohio kid, a school that a lot of Ohio State does really well at. The only thing is Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens, both who are Wayne alum. And he's a high academic kid, so Notre Dame's going to be in the mix. And I think both schools will get an official visit, but I could see a decision happening in the next 30 days. But I think Xavier and Nwankpa is a kid to look at for a summer decision. And, maybe even Amari Abor, if the visit goes great. You never know. He could just say, you know what, this is the place for me. But I do think he's going to take his visit. So I'll go with Emil Wagner. But there could be some surprises. Some guys, George Fitzpatrick from Colorado, if they decide he's got the green light, he could say, I'm not losing the opportunity to go to Ohio State. So there's some under the radar guys for sure, like a George Fitzpatrick that could be in the mix. But I'll go with Emil Wagner.
This is something that Tony Garderman and I talked on the episode of Buckeye Weekly that we released yesterday. The over-under on the number of commitments to Ohio State between now and end of the month, July 4th, whatever you want to say, next month or so, from the class of 2021, which this is me saying JT Tuimoloau without saying JT Tuimoloau. So 2021, 2022, and 2023. Over under on the number of commitments to Ohio State from those classes in the next month or so. I said it at 5.5. Tony thought that might have been low, but I mean, 6 commits in a month is a lot, but also it feels like there's probably going to be a tidal wave of decisions pretty much everywhere the next month. So where would you go with 5.5? Is that crazy high? Is that way too low? Like where would you go with that?
It's neither crazy high or too low, like especially all 3 classes. I would probably go under, but like guessing 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's right. It's just about right. I think you'll probably get 2 to 3 kids in the 2023 class just because they'll see campus for the first time and all that good stuff. I think you'll get a couple kids in 2022, and then I think you'll get, we'll see how visits go, but I think you'll get that maybe 1 in 2021. So that's how I'm kind of looking at it, but I could see 2022 getting 3 or 2023 getting 3. So I think 5.5 is a good number. I would go under, but just slightly.
All right. Now, which of the guys visiting this weekend would be the biggest surprise to commit to Ohio State? Like who is the biggest long shot visiting this weekend? That's like I mean, there are lots of guys who they're going against Clemson and Alabama and Georgia. And I mean, all the other good programs across the country. So who would be the most surprising to commit to Ohio State at some point?
Either Zach Price or Curtis Perry, I think, just because of everything I mentioned before. Branch, I think it's Ohio State or it's staying in the West Coast. Nwankpa, I think Ohio State has the lead heading into visits. I do think other schools are there, but that wouldn't be a surprise. Toriano Pride, I mean, everyone thinks Clemson right now, so that might be a surprise, but I think Ohio State might be number 2 there. And then, Dominic James, I think they got to decide, is that a guy they want? George Fitzpatrick, same thing there. Emil Wagner, I think people are expecting to land at Ohio State. And Amario Bohr, I'd have Ohio State as the leader. So that leaves me with those 2 guys, Zach Rice and Curtis Perry. And I would say either one of those. Curtis Perry would probably be more surprising just because Zach Rice has at least had Ohio State in his top group for however long since he's been offered. But Curtis Perry, the visit's kind of coming out of nowhere. And it's an unofficial. And if you get the official maybe in the fall, that would be huge. I mean, that would be a huge pull at a position of need at defensive tackle. So we'll see how it goes, but those 2 are my guys.
All right, and last one, which guy visiting this weekend, either committed or not, is someone who is going to finish ranked a lot higher than where he is on lists currently?
Ooh, let me look down this list real quick just to make sure my initial instinct isn't being overlooked. I'm going to go with Kai Stokes, committed 3-star defensive back out of Florida. He's a kid who's recently blown up, got offers from everyone, including Ohio State, and then committed to Ohio State a couple weeks later. I think he's rock solid to the Buckeyes, and I think they found a gem. I think once people get their eyes on this kid, see the way he moves and how athletic he is, and looking at him as a safety, just with the character too. I don't want to say sure thing because I don't know if there is such thing, but I feel pretty good about him going to be a successful player at Ohio State over his 4 to 5 years on campus.
All right, so that is the end of the Morning Scoop podcast, but I have to let you plug the Around the Oval podcast because you have a fantastic guest coming up this week, someone who I asked you before we recorded and you said the name and I was like, ooh, that's a really good one. So let people know who you're going to have on the show this week.
Yeah, if you've ever seen any of the Ohio State trailers before a game or any of the awesome just video collateral that they put out over the last handful of years, the guy who's been in charge of that is a guy by the name of Zach Schwartz. And Zach recently left Ohio State to take a job at WME, which is an agency doing a lot of their creative stuff with video. And we'll talk about that more on the podcast. I don't want to give away too much, but it's awesome to have a guy like Zach. I don't know what his exact title is. It might have been creative director or head of video or something like that. But he was basically the guy, the creative genius behind all the awesome videos that Ohio State has put out, whether it's practice highlights or whether it's those theatrical-esque trailers before a game, wrapping up a season, player highlights, things along those lines. And so to get the kind of POV from someone who was inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center and giving a behind the scenes look at like Ryan Day versus Urban Meyer and working for those guys. And also like what goes into that job. Cause I think those are really underappreciated guys. I also want a question that's come up with the board has been, why are all these people in the creative department leaving? And I'm not going to like ask him to I don't think it's throwing Ohio State under the bus. I think people just need to realize when you put in the amount of hours you do to work for a university athletic program job, whether that's volleyball, women's volleyball, or men's basketball or football, it's a lot of hours. It's weekends. It's every single day, no summers off. Like you're in it. And I'm not saying they don't pay well, but for what you do, you can definitely have a better work-life balance at some places like WME or Sammy Silverman going out on his own and creating his own kind of being a contractor for graphic design. Or I know one of the recent creative guys went to the NBA. Like there's just better work-life balance situations. So I haven't spoken to him yet. I'll see what he says if he agrees with me on that. And that's kind of the reason, or it's just coincidence and opportunity. But just getting some of those insights from him, I think is going to be really awesome to listen to, both for me and all of our listeners on Buckeye Scoop.
Yeah, that is something, that video production and the graphic design, like that has turned into a massive part of recruiting in general and the Ohio State football recruiting machine in particular. You have seen schools that do graphics badly. You have seen schools that do graphics great. And it's like, this stuff matters. Like this absolutely makes a difference in terms of just making your school appealing to potential recruits. So yeah, that is. And also as someone who has done some video production in my time, I don't think anyone has any sense for exactly how much time goes into making one of those like 2-minute videos. It's like, oh, what is that? Like, I don't know, half an hour of work. It's like, no. That is not quick. That is not easy. That is a long, involved process. So yeah, I am very, very interested to hear that episode. That's going to be a really interesting conversation about, I think, a very underrated and underappreciated part of the Ohio State football recruiting machine. So Alex, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. And look forward to that episode of Around the Oval. You can find that and all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify. Just type in Buckeye Scoop in the search bar and all of those will come up. You can subscribe right there so you never miss an episode, but you can also leave us a 5-star rating review, which we greatly appreciate. We really do. That will help other folks find those shows as well. They're also on YouTube at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop if you prefer to watch them there. And you just hit that subscribe button at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop, and you'll get notified every time I post a new video. That, of course, is all free. That is all it's all on YouTube, and it's all right there. And you get notified every time I post a new video, so you never miss one. And last of all, Alex has talked about it. This is going to be a crazy month for recruiting, a crazy month for college football. And the only place to get the full insider access that you can only get at Buckeye Scoop is at Buckeye Scoop, buckeyescoop.com. Sign up to become a member today. We're celebrating our first anniversary on Friday, as Alex mentioned. And if you sign up before then, get some fun extra perks and some fun bonuses. And if you also are entered into the drawing to win Nevada's tickets for the Oregon game, 4 tickets for the Oregon game, you can win them if you are a member of Buckeye Scoop before July 4th. But sign up today. You get all the first anniversary perks, plus you can be a part of that drawing as well. That's just all at buckeyescoop.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.